anxietycenter.com.
Jim.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. That was really helpful, actually. Really helpful.
Oh, good. Good. It's good to hear that some stuff is being helpful.
I have a really small question, if that's okay. It's going to be a small one, I promise.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's regarding, I've heard you say before, and I'm working with Larry, by the way, and I asked him as well, like, okay, I understand that we have the behaviors that are responsible for creating anxiousness and stress. Okay, these are the ones that we want to tackle. Yeah. But I get sometimes like confused, so to speak, of what makes an anxious behavior. For example, like I cannot see the connection between like impatience is an anxious behavior, but I'm not fearing something, or my behavior does not stem from fear or produce fear, or you know what I'm trying to say a little bit. Sorry, I'm trying with my English. I hope I make sense.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Well, there's usually fear to a lot of these behaviors, even impatience. Sometimes we may not be aware of it. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, worst case scenario, what can happen here? Why am I being impatient? Why can't I wait? And a lot of times we'll come up with an answer. It may not be obvious to us at the moment, but if you look at our anxious behaviors, especially the underlying factors, they all have fear tied to them. Fear of some kind. People-pleasing, fear of rejection. Probably because we came from a background where we felt rejected and we didn't like it much. And so we want to be accepted. And so we adopt, people-pleasing behaviors to be accepted, although they're also destructive because they're also stressful. We have to guess what the other person's going to like and then do that consistently. The other person isn't disappointed. And that's just a lot of work and stress. So, working with Larry or anyone, a therapist, you can always ask them, so what is the fear at the root of this particular one? And if they've rated your core fears, you can always tie it back to some of the higher core fears. So there's always a reason we do it. That's why anxiety is fear-based. We always perceive a threat somewhere. Identifying that threat is super important to lasting success.
Okay, thank you so much. So it's not like it's always fear. There's not like such a thing as like, okay, it's just a really stressful behavior, for example.
Well, there's stressful behaviors too. They're not typically the problem when it comes to anxiety disorder. They can contribute to stress, yes, but typically, again, when it comes to anxious behavior, there's a threat attached somewhere. For example, people who get heated when someone cuts them off in traffic, it's often because we've come from a traumatic background and we're hypersensitive to justice. We just don't like it. And so someone's gotten away with something they shouldn't have gotten away with, and so we get angry or whatever. And so again, understanding why we do what we do makes all the difference, and it will always come down to a perceived threat somewhere or a consequence of some of the background factors we've lived through that set up, behaviors that make us more anxious than others.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jim?
We're going to be talking much more about this in the years ahead. A whole focus right now is level 2 recovery stuff because there's a lot of pieces. And, understanding where they come from can also help us work through therapy. So it's not kind of this big mystery. So there's a lot of things that we're going to be doing in the years ahead to get after all these pieces. So hopefully that'll be helpful.
Yeah, I tried to get on to one of the therapists there, but a lot of them were so busy. I was on a wait list to a couple of them. So
yeah. Yes, we get a lot of appointment requests, and unfortunately, we can't help everyone because our therapists are all busy. They've been booked up probably now for mostly 2 to 3 years now, with openings here and there. We are looking at recruiting for more good therapists, but they're hard to find. So unfortunately, getting on a waiting list is good because it will get you at some point, but how long that is just up, to the therapist wait list.
Right. The question I actually had that still wasn't, the question I had for the group, this anxiety symptom that I have, does anybody ever suffer from that trembling or nervous energy? Is that just part of anxiety, or is it just, because I feel like I suffer with it like 3/4 of the day. Does anybody have like
that, Jackie?
Go ahead, what?
I used to get that, especially in the morning.
Yep.
Yeah, the
Physical.
Oh, wait. Guys, hold on. I can't. Y'all are talking about that. Go ahead. What now?
I used to get the trembling, internal trembling and physical and external trembling, especially in the morning. It was almost like when I jolt awake in the morning, it was almost like I was having a seizure or something. It was that pronounced. And, just.
Is it jitteriness, Marguerite? I mean, is it like when you've had too many cups of coffee? Is that what
Yeah, I get that internal one that feels like that, but then I had the external ones, like you could visibly see it. You could visibly see me shaking.
Yeah, I've had that. Mine is more like that nervous energy where I'm like, oh my God. And then and then it would have these like I would get up and get my day going. And all of a sudden about 35, 40 minutes later, it would still be there. Don't get me wrong. It'd still be there. And then I would get these like emotional, like waves that are a little higher and it's crazy. And
it's completely normal. I guarantee you. I mean, I've had that since
Let me ask a question though. You said you were looking into thyroid stuff. You don't take biotin, do you, before you take thyroid tests?
No, I don't.
Okay. Just wondering.
No, I was completely off of biotin for 8 or 9 days before I took a thyroid test.
Okay. It can stay in your system a little bit longer, but that will skew your tests. Because I know for myself, thyroid levels are too high, like too hyper. I have that shaking. So
yeah, but no, I mean, my thyroid levels are like super. Like my TSH is like 0.89, and I mean it's like crazy.
0.89. That's very low.
Yeah, well,
that's hyper. So you may.
Is that
U.S. standards?
Yeah, that's U.S. standards.
0.8.
No. 0. I can't remember what I'm telling you. It's
okay.
0.89. It's normal.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's been tested like several. I mean, I've had like 3 or 4 endocrinologists. Plus, I had a functional doctor look at my stuff, and she's like, "Let me see. Let me write it down."
I know way too much about the thyroid, not having one.
No, mine is my TSH is 0.89, and that's normal. That's like it's not hyper.
That's good.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, my thyroid function came back normal as well. All the times they checked it.
Yeah.
Very common.
You scared the shit out of me there. Excuse my language. You scared me there for a second.
That's what I did. Sent her down another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Because
the symptom you have is so common. I mean, I've had this since I was 9 years old, and I can tell you that it's one of the most common symptoms. One of the first symptoms, basically, of anxiety.
Yeah.
Well, trembling will occur. Trembling and shaking internally or visibly occurs in about half of all anxious people. That's how common it is.
Yeah, and the jitter is very, very. I mean, to tell you the truth, I know people say this, like, oh, you're first time, but I would trade, because I've been through so many symptoms since 9 years old, and I would literally trade it for the one that I am hypervigilant with now. I would trade it, and it's the dizziness one. And trade it for it.
Right.
Because
I don't get dizzy. Dizzy doesn't freak me out.
It's the hardest to push through because it's almost 24/7, unless I'm in a car, laying down or sitting down. It's almost 24/7. It's just bouncy, like you're on a boat, and just craziness, and then all the sensory stuff that goes with it. And it's the worst one. I mean, my symptoms have, through the years, have bounced around, and I've never really had new ones added to it. And then this one came on me gradually over the last 5 or 6 years with stress, taking care of being a caretaker and all those other type A personalities. But it to me is one that I'm like, the other ones were like, I could get through them, but it's like, I had it was weird. Like I would go have the throat tightness for years, all the tests done, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd have the heart palpitations, on and off, and been in the ER and all that. But then when I figured out what they were, and I stopped fearing them, they literally went away. And I think that because I suffered for so long, and then when I realized what they were and what it was from and why, and stopped fearing it, my brain just like, okay, she's not afraid of this anymore, so I'm not going to do. So another one would pop up, something else,
Yeah.
So the fear drives them. The fear drives these symptoms.
I was going to ask, what was the lady's name that was talking to me about she didn't have a thyroid? Was that Katrina?
Yes, it's Katrina.
Yeah. So anyways, if I may interject, I mean, I know this is a medical show, but anyway, I just pulled up my stuff. It's my value for my TSH is 0.85. And then,
That's good.
And then my T3 total is 6.3. And T3 total is 0.94. I mean, they're all within range. T3 is 3.3 free.
That's your free T3?
Yeah, T3 is 3.3.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that would be high, but I'm not a doctor and we're not really supposed to give
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, the range is 2.3-4.2.
Yeah, I know. But everybody's different.
Everybody is different, but I mean, I've had like multiple endocrinologists say, no, this isn't causing your
Which free T4?
My what now?
Free T4.
My free T4. It is 1.1.
That's low. Yeah. I mean, that's normal. Yeah.
It's normal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've got and I also looked at those, and like I said, the functional doctor as well looked at them, and they're like, no, go ahead. What were you say, Katrina?
No, I was just going to say, well, if the doctors, and I mean, that sounds normal to me, but if the doctors are telling you that too, then it must be anxiety, I guess. I mean, we want to hear that, right? I don't know, for myself, I always feel better knowing that it's crazy. It sounds nuts, but even when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was like, oh, good, I have something. It sounds
well. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is it worth looking at? Because you kind of freaked me out there. I'm just kind of freaking out a little bit now.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to freak you out. No, I think you're fine. You're absolutely fine. The only reason I mentioned the biotin is because it can do things to your thyroid levels, and sometimes you'll be being overtreated and you won't know it. So
no, I'm not being treated for anything.
Oh, you're not on it. Okay, but
no, I'm not.
I think it can also skew your levels, though. I'm pretty sure.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Okay, back up. I'm not on any thyroid medication. I'm not on biotin. I mean, before I do a blood test for thyroid, I usually wait 5 or 6 days, 6 to 7 days. I think the last one was 8 days before I had test.
Yeah.
And I mean, all my thyroid tests, even before I was even taking stuff, is still coming out the same way. Like TSH 0.879, T4 6.4, T4 free direct 1.31, reverse T3 is 18.
I'm sure your thyroid's fine. I mean, if they're telling you that it's not your thyroid, and it sounds like it isn't, but the only thing I mentioned was just the biotin, because I know even if you're not on thyroid medicine, it can skew your results.
No, I'm not. I mean, I think 8 or 9 days without biotin is good.
Yeah, it's probably fine.
And then my T3 is 2.6 free. T3.
Right.
Yeah, you got me all kind of.
No, don't put it out of your mind. It's not that.
Yeah, this is why it's important to talk with your doctor about these things.
Yeah. I mean,
with that. Yeah. I just mentioned the biotin. That was it, because I know a lot of people don't realize that some supplements can interfere with blood work, not just thyroid stuff.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about. I'm just like, I just got crazy. This is what's causing me to go nuts, because I'm just like, I have all the trembling and shaking.
Hey, yeah. Janet, before you get worked up, because I know it's easy to do, I'm going to tell you right now, I had that a long time. I actually didn't even notice it within the last couple months, and it came back last week for a couple of days. Do not freak out about it. Trembling's totally normal.
No,
I'm
just freaking. I'm just freaking out because, my thyroid is my thing. And she said that, one of my, that seems a little low. And I'm like, hyper, and now I'm like freaking out.
Yeah. No, if that helps as a dietitian, I don't think you have a problem.
No. What now?
Yeah, if that's a help to you, I don't think you have a problem. And usually, when we saw patients with thyroid problems, it needed to be a big deviation in order to have a problem. Even to close ranges, it was fine.
No, your level's perfect. Your levels are perfect. I thought you said
you're good. Everybody experienced
0.08. That's everybody. A little, but you didn't say 0.08. You said 0.8, which is very different than 0.0.
Yeah, it's 0.879.
You're perfect. Don't worry. It's totally perfect where you are. It's totally perfect.
We also want to keep in mind that hyperstimulation can affect thyroid levels. We see this time and time and time again, where people have been diagnosed with, hyper or hypo, and they've worked at, eliminating the hyperstimulation. Everything's come back into the normal range. So
Exactly.
what you said is just fine. And trembling is super common. In fact, I just had an episode of that myself coming through the surgery. I wasn't able to sleep for 4 weeks just because of the pain in my hip. Wouldn't let me sleep longer than an hour at a time. And I remember sitting on the couch, trying to sit on the couch one day thinking, I wonder if the floor is shaking.
No, I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
Jim. I just got freaked out. I got scared because that's my trigger.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I mean, she, obviously you can tell now.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
And-
you don't think everything, everything looks good. I mean, Katrina, whatever.
Yeah.
I went through my T4. Can I go through that again with you guys? My T4 is 6.3. That's my T4 total is 6.3. My T3 total is 0.94. My T3 free is 3.3. And my T4 free is 1.1.
If I can
that
make a
sounds
suggestion,
good.
if I can make a suggestion, Teresa, rather
Yeah.
than trying to get our opinion of that, I would encourage you just to call your doctor again.
I
Just
already
run
did,
through-
and she said she said there's your numbers are perfect.
Yeah, that's what I would leave it at that right there.
You have to trust that. You
Yeah.
do.
What now?
Or you have to trust that, because the
Yep.
more you're doing right now, I'm just telling you from facts. The more that you're doing now, you are setting your brain up to think that it is in danger, and it's going to stay in danger mode, and your symptoms are going to stay escalated because
Yeah,
you're-
I just started shaking. I started shaking again
Yes,
because I'm in
immediately.
fear.
It's
Yeah.
the same thing with my trigger thing is dizziness. Anything emotional, or if anybody said anything, all of a sudden sets it off. It's worse. It's worse. But because
Yeah.
you're putting your brain into danger mode, so you have to have your brain has to know that it's safe, it's okay, and like doing what Jim says and doing the facts, and believing that all these doctors, the best doctor, top 50 in the state, all that, you have to trust her and trust that and move on from there.
I went to the emergency room. They're telling me nothing's wrong with my thyroid. I went to a functional doctor, and she even looked, even with their tight, their tight numbers are like, their levels are like really tight, and they're telling me there's nothing wrong. And then I went back. I had like 8 tests in like 4 months, and it's coming back the same.
Yeah.
And I'm just scared.
one thing,
You know
It
what,
scared me.
Janice? It's your fear. It's your fear. And what does God say? Fear is a liar.
Mhm.
Okay? It's a liar. You're fine.
Katrina scared me.
No, you're no. She
Mean to-
didn't scare you.
So
She didn't
sorry.
scare you. She said something, and you're scaring. I'm not trying to say this to be mean or anything. Don't I have a huge soft spot for people that are dealing with this stuff, but she didn't scare you. You took what she said and it scared you because you scared yourself, and now you're scared, which is a valid thing. But fear's a liar. It's just Amy. What's that thing he Stacey?
I'm just
he was
tired
my
of
therapist
trembling.
for a while.
I'm just trembling like all the time, and then it goes down in the
Yeah.
afternoon and evening.
Yeah.
Well, that's because you know what.
Levels
The
go down.
cortisol level. Yeah, it's the cortisol spike
Yeah.
in the morning and it drops later.
It helps
Yeah.
me too.
Teresa, I
And
also
I'm
wanted
just-
to mention too that your reaction to Katrina's comment clearly demonstrates what you're dealing with is anxiety.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Really?
that's where that focus should be, is working on your anxiety and reducing your stress. All the symptoms you mentioned are totally consistent with hyperstimulation, and your reaction is pretty consistent with anxiety. So I think all the information you've been given has been accurate, especially about what you're dealing with.
Are you
And-
seeing a therapist at all? Any kind of therapist?
Yeah, I am.
You are? Oh, okay.
Like, I don't know if this one will help a lot, but with me, it helped me to figure out, okay, this is anxiety. When I kind of understood what the symptoms do, like I had like the tightness in the throat, but when I understood that, hey, if a tiger attacked you in the woods and the body, what's going to do is going to tighten up the muscles to protect you from your organs. you know,
Mm-hmm.
or the trembling is like, I don't know exactly. Jim is going to explain.
That's to
But
get you running, I'm sure.
yeah, that's
Literally.
like to get you running, to have your
Oh,
maybe your muscles ready, you know, pumped
Mm-hmm.
up. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's going to be help to you, like in order to contain the fear better.
Yeah. I mean, it just triggered me because I've been working on this whole thinking it's been my thyroid for like 9 months, and it was like, it's been hell. It has absolutely been hell.
I
I
completely
mean,
understand.
and
The
the
thing is,
tremors
yeah,
and I'm sitting there looking at my numbers. I'm peeling them apart. I'm going to different doctors. I'm going to this and saying what's going on, and they're telling me no, it's not hyper. I was losing my hair for a while,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then but I'm just now gaining my weight back, and I wake up but yeah, Jim is right. When she triggered me, I just started trembling all over. I was shaking so bad.
Yeah,
yeah.
it
I was
touched your
shaking.
core fear.
Yeah, and
Well,
it's just horrible. It's
there's also
hell.
good news there, Teresa. Your body's working the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's doing whatever it's supposed to do to keep you safe. Yeah.
I mean, I did see that thing on your website about like stress and cortisol can really mess with your hormones all throughout.
Yep. Totally.
Oh yeah,
Oh
definitely.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I mean, how many endocrinologists do I need to go to before I feel confident that this is anxiety?
That's
And we
with
see
me. I
that.
go to the doctors. No more. Just
What
be done.
now?
Be done
Yeah.
with the doctor. No more.
And we see that quite often where people, off to the doctor many times trying to seek that reassurance. But that
Yeah.
seeking is part of the problem because it means we're
It
not
makes-
fully buying into the fact that we're dealing with facts here. We think there's something else, and that something else keeps the fear going. So that's why we say deal with the facts. You've been through sufficient testing. You've got sufficient results back to realize you are in good shape. It's just now you have to get your hyperstimulation under control on this and the anxiety about what you're dealing with.
So can I ask one more question, Katrina? Katrina, you didn't think that my numbers were bad, did you?
No, your numbers sound great to me, but I'm not a doctor. I just know a lot about thyroids because obviously, like I said, I don't have one. But
Right.
but I mean, I wouldn't worry. Like Jim said, you've been to all the doctors, and I mean, what helps me too. I know this is bad too, but
Because you freaked me out when you scared. You said,
no. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I really didn't. I just.
But you thought I was like, it was. What did you think it was? What did you say? You thought it
I
was?
thought you said it was 0.08, and that's
No, God, no.
0.8, because 0.08 is a little hyper. It's not bad. I mean, I've had mine so suppressed because when you have thyroid cancer, they have to suppress you.
Wait a minute.
And the only reason I
Go
said
back.
that
Go back. 0. What?
0.08, but I mean, I've had it like 0.001. Okay.
No. Mine is 0.85.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. And what helps me too sometimes is like if I'm obsessing over it, like my results. I mean, everything's in the green for you, correct? When you look at your range of your blood, so you can say to yourself, you know what? That's good. I'm all right. I'm good. My doctors are telling me this. I see it in front of me. Here's the evidence. Like Jim was saying, you look at the evidence. You don't look at what you think it could be. And
yeah, I mean, my evidence is good, and this was done, like, and then she actually did my test again in March, and she said, they're coming back the same. You're in range. She's like, there is no way that you have hyperthyroidism, and
you just have to keep telling yourself that. And just keep telling yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Keep
the
on containing. Yeah.
And and then, I was up at a monastery last weekend because my father had passed away, and I went for a memorial, and I was asking the monks, I'm like, how do you deal with the constant stress? I try to get everybody's, and one of the monks said to me, well, you just have to make the best of things and stay positive. And even if you had something going on, we still, like Jim said, as we get older, and I'm trying to embrace this, as we get older, we have more and more issues that happen to us. We just have to kind of just say, okay, make the best out of it, right? And stay positive and get to why you're feeling what you're feeling.
Hey, when you were feeling all this, when you had your suppression and all that stuff with your thyroid, did you have the tremors and shakes? Because I heard that you have to be really super low for that to actually even happen.
Sometimes not. I mean, again, everybody's different, and I don't know if that was the reason. I mean, I get the tremors and shakes sometimes, and my thyroid levels are perfect. So, I mean, that's evidence right there. It's anxiety. So, you just have to try to find a way to
Accept it as it's anxiety.
and accept that every doctors are telling you the truth. You see it in writing. It's right in front of you. The evidence is there. And are you containing? Are you meditating during the day or doing?
No, I'm not meditating.
Tremendous.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Meditating?
Yes. It's, that's level 1 recovery, right, Jim? We need to focus on that first, right?
Yeah. It's getting the hyperstimulation down. Yeah.
Yeah. And be consistent with it. It's very difficult to be consistent. I can tell you that. But if you're consistent, you will see results and your body will calm down.
Regularly,
Can I just jump in?
I was just going to say regular deep relaxation.
As someone who's went through this 6 times,
You what
I
now?
can
Who what?
definitely reassure you, yes, this is absolute.
Hold on.
Yeah,
what was said?
I was just going to say regular deep relaxation is important because you have to retrain your nervous system to be calmer. If you aren't manually retraining it, it's just going to stay wired. And so regular deep relaxation calms the nervous system over the course of time, and that brings down the cortisol levels that circulate during the day, and that's what resets everything as we bring it down. If we aren't actively doing that, the body can stay stressed. So that's why it is so important to get good sleep when you can, regular deep relaxation and containment, because if you do those things consistently, your body will recover. It has no choice.
Right.
Jim,
Jim, wait. Who was talking before? Thomas? Was it Thomas?
No, it's John here. But I just wanted to pipe in, like, evidence is important, but I had to realize for me, I will never have 100% certainty that anxiety is recoverable. But that's the same for anything. There's never 100%. And that's what I want. It's like, I want to know as sure as night follows day that anxiety is recoverable. But like, that's an impossible demand. And maybe it's the same with you with your thyroid thing. Like, you're always going to have doubt. But it's more so your fear of whether you have thyroid. It's more so my fear of whether anxiety is recoverable. It's the thoughts. That's what I need to let go of, the fear of, and like really sit with that. You're never going to get 100% certainty. That's what I have.
Well, no, I know. I understand that. But I think that my tremors and my anxiety or whatever is going on with me, the physical sensations, is actually caused by my thyroid. And that's
but if your doctor's saying otherwise, three
chances
of them are we're all saying, I've had that symptom as well. It's one of my last ones. It's not so. I wouldn't go to tremors, but I get this real rush, this real tenseness, this kind of rushy feel that's there. That's my kind of one of my last few symptoms. So it's really, really common for anxiety. And if your doctor's saying it's not there, chances are that's what it is. But I totally can see where you're coming from. And when I'm feeling anxious and revved up, it's like all my thoughts go into super doubt mode. I'll doubt everything. I'll doubt anxiety.center.com. I'll doubt Jim. I'll doubt everyone that's here. I'll find reasons in my brain not to believe. And it's just another symptom of being hyperstimulated. That's what I see.
Yeah.
Jim,
I don't know.
ask a question?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. I was just asking about when you're hyperstimulated and you work through it. Because you said sometimes it could take up to 2 years. I think with Stacy, for me, it could be up to 18 months. When you're trying to get through hyperstimulation, what happens if you have 2 or 3 days where you're calm and everything, but then you have several days where you're back to phase 1 again? So does that mean that you're going to have to start all over? Does this mean that? What is that? Do you have to constantly be in a uphill getting better with hyperstimulation and what you do to overcome it? I don't know. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. No, you don't start over again because hyperstimulation can cause the body to behave erratically. So you can have, as you're working and as the body starts to recover and hyperstimulation starts to drop, it can settle more into feeling better for periods of time. And then for no particular reason, it can bounce right into a high level of hyperstimulation again. It just depends on how it manages, all the various chemistries in the body. Yeah, it doesn't mean we're starting at square one.
Having to start all over, does it? Or?
No, because if you're working, because here's the thing, the starting all over means we have no knowledge of hyperstimulation and we haven't done any work. And then we have to start. It's about getting the knowledge, start to retraining the body to be calmer. But if we're doing that consistently day after day after day, and we have a couple of rough days, even if we have some nervousness come up, it doesn't set us right back to square one. It just means, maybe we've increased the stress a little bit. Our goal is to consistently practice our recovery strategies day after day for long enough for the body to finally settle back to normal health over the course of the long term. So the only way we get back to square one is if we go through another month of severe worry and all those kind of things, and we can crank that hyperstimulation level up again. But again, it's not starting at square one. It just means we've had a setback. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just wondered because like some days, you could feel like you're reaching that calmness, or you still have the symptoms, but you still feel calm. It's hard to explain, but like then you may get in a fight with your husband or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you're back to your symptoms again, and your hyperstimulation's revved up, and so you have to get yourself back down again, and it's just like up and down, so it becomes hopeless.
Yeah, and this is where dealing with the underlying factors is so important, so we don't get into that up and down thing, because we don't always want to be in stress damage control, because that's really not recovery. We want to be at a place where we're not creating that stress ongoing, so that even if stressors come along, the body's more able to manage it, and we're able to rebound faster.
Yeah, and the underlying factor too, of getting them under, like figuring out what they are. Like when you figure out what they are, you can work with that. Because I'm at that point just through with Stacy, that I understand now why I have the behavior I have because of the trauma I had when I was a child. I understand now why I'm this way, why I'm that way. And it's like, wow, I've had this all this time. I never realized that, that I'm this way because of being, abandoned or neglected as a child and having to take care of myself and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah. And that does leave an impact. And it's good to have that understanding of why, but then we have to do the work of making the changes, because our automatic patterns are going to kick in. And this is where we have to change those patterns. And we do that through repetition reinforcement. That's why we offer grace to ourselves, because we're not going to be perfect at it. And that's not the goal. The goal is to make wholesale change over the course of time.
Yeah, long time. But I figured that out. I figured that out with the childhood thing, having to be in control of everything for so many years, all my life. I have to be the one that is in control, that takes care of everything. Because for me, I was the one that had to do that for myself. I didn't have anybody do it. I did it from a child on up. So it's really hard to let go of that. And Stacy was giving me this scenario about the rope holding, on a bridge. That one. But he was saying, talking about how you have to let go of the ropes. And, which anyway. So, okay. Well, you explain that, Ben. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. Really recovery really starts when we do our level 2 work. Sure, we can get the body stressed down. That's easy to do. We just underreact and, reduce stress and give the body time, and then it just recovers. But it's getting that underlying factor work done that makes the difference long term. So that's why we always reinforce it, because that's what we consider lasting success, is when you've dealt with those underlying factors, you're living a healthy way, then you don't have to be in stress damage control all the time. And even if stresses do come along, you're able to rebound really, really quickly. So good for you for doing level 2 work.
I just had a question. So the thing is, I'm the person regarding freaking out with the stress threshold, with the comments and all that. Actually, really fast, my background, overindulgent parenting, overcritical parenting, many behaviors, perfectionism, impatience, worrying, people pleasing, stuff like that, low self-esteem, etc. Some traumas, bullying, things like that. And but the thing is that, and that's like that triggered me actually really, really badly. And like the thing is, like, I have a question regarding stress. Okay, so we know how stress works roughly in the body, but regarding hyperstimulation, like, I viewed it always, after my 5th time, I viewed it always like, okay, it's about stress paid. It's about, let's say, like, I use that analogy, right? Like $30, if we pay $30 of stress every day, and that's normal stress, the body's going to be fine. If we pay $35 and then $36, like more stress than we rest the body, okay? Then the stress is going to become unrelieved ongoing stress. And that's when we're headed towards hyperstimulation.
Yeah.
But I had a question. Like, if that's the case, then how can we keep ourselves like with the threshold, right? If the threshold is true, then how can we go through like 2 weeks of really, really high stress, okay,
Yeah.
and ongoing unrelieved stress, and then we get symptoms, and then like what? Like we cross the threshold, and then we have to suffer for months. Doesn't it depend on how much changes the cells have made stress-wise in the system?
I wouldn't say cell-wise. There's a lot of changes that occur, and usually it's related to chronic stress, chronic unrelieved stress. That's one of the reasons we're big proponents of managing stress day by day by regularly practicing a deep relaxation technique, doing stress reducing activities so you're not building it up, so you don't ever have to worry about getting into the place where maybe you get into hyperstimulation where you're in recovery for months, because usually that takes a lot of chronic stress that's unrelieved. So when I wrote the answer, when you really think about it, we don't have to be afraid of stress at all, since we can reverse it all anytime we want just by doing certain things. Nothing to be afraid of. But because you are concerned about the threshold, it means there's still a fear attached to stress, and it might be because you've come through this. Sorry?
It's the fear of rebound.
Yeah,
rebound. Like I equated hyperstimulation with the struggle,
Yep.
And I tried containing myself when that happened, because I had it was after Christmas, right? Typical, which is like really stressful period.
It is.
I had like 2 months of stress, but it was elevated, but it was not so elevated. At least that's what I thought. It was, if that makes sense, stable elevated. It was like my cup was sitting around the 60%.
Yeah.
Because I kind of know how stress works. At least I'd like to think I know. But the thing is, I had a really, really stressful week on top of that. Okay. And then after that, I had symptoms, but I was mildly hyperstimulated. My symptoms were lasting around 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But then the PTSD factor kicked in from the previous times I went through anxiety disorder, the hyperstimulation bouts. And I was really scared, and I knew, okay, all I have to do here is that's what I said, pay less stress and increase rest. And I'm going to do well. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Of course, Amy needed tons of convincing regarding that, right?
Yeah.
But I was seeing some small progress in the first 2-3 weeks. And then the thing with the comment happened with threshold. I got really scared because when you told me threshold, because the way I contained myself was, okay, my stress was sitting around slightly above average.
Yeah.
And then what happened was I just added a week of stress. Okay. Since my body was not giving me continual progressing signs that I'm getting to hyperstimulation, then that means it was stable. So it's just a week, and maybe my body had a little bit of a more of a reaction to it.
Yeah.
That's how I explained it to myself to keep myself calm.
Yeah.
But then the threshold thing happened, and I was like, oh no, I crossed the threshold. Actually, it is a threshold, and there's and it's just one threshold. There are not many thresholds. That's how I got it in my head. If there was many thresholds, there's a small threshold you can break, you go to mild hyperstimulation. And there's another threshold to go to moderate. And there's another threshold to go to high. You know what I'm trying to say? I thought it was a one done thing.
Yeah. And that's why I made responded the way I did, because it's the fear of going backwards again. And that does come from struggling with it so many times and not really getting to the finish line where you can feel that stability where you're not going to go back again. And that means to me a couple of things. Level 1 recovery has been completed because you're still afraid of the symptoms. Because if you complete level 1 recovery, it doesn't matter how many symptoms you get or how long you have them. You just know what to do and who cares. But because there's still some sensitivity there's an anxious component, and that would be probably because, again, you're fearful of going back to that long struggle again. But as you're working at level 2 recovery now, you'll find that you don't have to be concerned about stress because it won't be as high as it was. And even if you're stressed, you do have some days where it's stressful, doesn't really matter because you know what to do to reverse it. And you'll gain that confidence where it's a non-issue. You're just not quite there yet.
Yeah, but I'm wondering a little bit. I feel completely helpless when I get to a place that I'm getting symptom after symptom after symptom, because it's like my mind does it by itself, you know? It's like an old fear of the struggle, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And even though I'm trying to keep myself contained and I'm doing the strategies, uh, like, you know what I'm trying? It's like I just go there. It just like I feel out of control, so to speak.
Well, that's
And it's not. I'm not afraid of the symptoms. Basically, I'm afraid of crossing the threshold at the hyperstimulation. Like if God came down and He told me, "In 2 weeks you're gonna be fine,"
okay.
I'm saying fine.
Hang on one second. Let me ask you a question. All right.
Yeah.
So what if you cross the threshold? What's the worst case scenario?
I'm gonna struggle and suffer for months, and it's gonna take months and months of hard work, 24/7 containment, 4 meditations per day, all those things in order to reverse it, and like pretty much have a destroyed life until then.
All right. And so you see where the threat is, right? Now, is all that true?
If the threshold thing is true, it is true, because if I cross it, I will suffer for months.
But will you? But is that true? I mean, we often struggle long term because we don't know what we're doing. We don't even know what's causing stress. You're not typically aware of our anxious behaviors. So we struggle long term because we don't know what to do to reverse it. But now that you know what to do to reverse it, and since you've already done it several times, there should be no mystery there. So even if you do cross a threshold into hyperstimulation, no matter what range, just go back to what you did to recover the first 4 or 5 times and you'll be good again. You see how your fear is unfounded. I understand it because you were through that and you didn't like it the first time, but you're way beyond that now in terms of knowledge. So the threat you just said to me is actually not even a true threat, is it?
I understand your point, but it's just like, how do I say this? I'm afraid of the struggle. That's the thing.
So what about the struggle are you afraid of?
Many things, like having to continuously work on, like, you know what I mean, the struggle, right? Like the thing with like, oh, I get a big symptom there, then Amy is going to remember that experiences. I have to retrain myself going to that place again. I gotta like contain 24/7, be aware of my reactions to things constantly, 24/7, like keeping myself calm, etc. for month on top of month on top of month, and then eventually I'll get to the like. It's too much pain. I'm afraid of the pain.
Okay, hang on one second. All right. So if you aren't afraid of the symptoms, then why are you concerned about having them? Couldn't you just live your life normally despite the symptoms and work on stress reduction?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, I'm afraid of the symptoms. Then.
Yes, yeah. And when you responded to my comment that way, I knew you were missing that point.
Yeah.
But see, here's the deal. We don't have to be afraid of stress symptoms. They're just symptoms of stress, and we can reverse them just by doing certain things. And we can still live our lives normally despite the symptoms. And so it's not that we have to completely disrupt our life and stop living until the symptoms are gone. So you see how your picture of hyperstimulation isn't accurate. You still have that fear component, thinking that it's bigger than it is.
Yes and no. I get that when I have symptoms, all the negative memories associated with the struggle pop up, and Amy goes overboard, whatever.
Yeah.
So I understand that, and I'm containing that, but it's like almost uncontainable for me. And
well, it's uncontainable because of how you have the view of your struggle structured in your mind. For example, I've been through numerous episodes where I've had to dial back my stress because I push myself way too hard. I get 1 or 2 or 3 symptoms and I really don't care too much about them, so I just ignore them until I get to the place where it's like, you know what, I probably pushed my body farther than I should. I need to back off. I don't even think about, the struggle that I used to have. And I was in that struggle for 12 years. It scared the daylights out of me way back then. I have no concern about it at all because I know if I do certain things, it's going to go away. And that fits in with the 3 factors of fear. Something bad's going to happen, it's imminent, and there's nothing I can do about it. Well, if it's symptoms of stress, there's a lot we can do about it. We can completely eliminate them by doing certain things, and we don't have to disrupt our life. It doesn't have to be this big deal that you've made it into. So it's how you framed that struggle is where the problem is. That's what you become afraid of, not the facts about the struggle, if you know what I mean.
Okay, but on the other hand, like when you take if the threshold thing is true, which I guess it is, the thing is that it's going to take months of it, and like, who wants to be back at that place of struggling for months until their stress symptoms are under control, you know?
But is it a struggle, though? Why does it have to be perceived as a struggle? For example, if you cut your finger doing something or other, do you struggle until your fingers heal, or you just get on with life and it's an annoying big deal and you just move on?
Yeah, the second thing, obviously, but it's,
Yeah. And that's
not the same.
well, that's where you want to get to with stress symptoms. Realize it's not that big a deal. It's just your body has become stressed and is symptomatic. You can still live your life normally as best you can. Just err on the side of stress reduction and rest, and you'll be good again. So it's the view you have of your struggle, and it's probably some post-traumatic stress aspect of it and what it means to you. And there could be an element, and I actually guess there is an element of you're not fully convinced you can get better for good and stay good. That might be another aspect of it. But it's something you want to explore with your therapist, just to dig down to that core fear level to see what they are, so you can address those fears, so you can arrive at a different place about stress symptoms. So they're just symptoms of stress. It's not that big a deal. It doesn't have to be this huge deal anymore.
Yeah, but like, I'm trying to do, at least.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, for example, because there's something about the threshold that I'm not actually conveying properly here. That how are you not afraid that you crossed your stress threshold and you're going to suffer for months? I'm not talking about having stress symptoms for a week or 2 weeks or 5 weeks, because I'm not afraid of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not afraid of struggling for months because I don't ever let it get there. I'm aware of my symptoms of stress. I know where my stress levels are. I keep good track of them. And if I realize I'm pushing myself farther than I should, I stop and I take action, so it doesn't ever get to that place where it's months and months and months.
Yeah, but the thing is that, okay, that was really helpful. But last thing, that let's say you get like depersonalization, something like that, okay?
Yeah.
One of the more severe-ish symptoms, okay?
Yeah.
And how do you know you haven't crossed the threshold where it will take months and months? You know what I'm trying to say?
Well, let me clarify the threshold. Maybe that's a problem here. When the body's healthy, it can take a lot of stress. And so, you know, as I mentioned in the article and the illustration, it can take a lot of stress, ups and downs. As long as we're giving the body time in between those episodes to recover, it will. And so it can stay within that normal range of stress. But when we don't take those proactive measures, we can break that stress hold where the body isn't resilient anymore, and that's when we get into symptoms. And a first indication of that might be a symptoms lasting for 2 weeks, that we've gone into the mild hyperstimulation range. Or for me, even if I do get some in the mild hyperstimulation range, and if I'm working on, you know, something that I think is important, I'll keep pushing because I really don't care too much. It's like, yeah, so what? They're there.
You're odd to me with that. Like,
Hey, Jim, when you were going through this the first time, it took you like a while to get your symptoms down, didn't it?
Oh, a very long time. Yeah.
Like what, a couple of years? I mean, because now, what now?
It was about 2 years before I actually felt relatively normal, but I still had symptoms lingering after that came and went.
Okay, so yeah, because I feel like my hyperstimulation is pretty high.
Yeah, and if we're having symptoms 24/7 and they're just, you know, consistent and persistent.
Well, not 24/7. They're just like in the morning, and then they back off in the afternoon and evening. And then actually Tuesday, I completely was almost symptom free.
Well, that's a good indication that your body can settle at a lower level, so it may not be as high as you think it is.
And and then I was sleeping really well, and then I kind of went on, and I wasn't sleeping for a couple of days, and then like I feel tired and it's crazy. I feel tired, wired, and then I don't know. It's baffling to me.
Yeah, and this is why we want to come to level 1 recovery, where we're not concerned about the symptoms. There's symptoms of stress. We reduce the stress, give the body time, it recovers. And that's why I was saying, you know, Fuevo's the same thing. I could push my body really hard. And even if I got into a place of depersonalization or, some of the stronger symptoms that I used to have way back when, wouldn't bother me because I just know how to turn them around. And I can do it every time. So it's not a threat. And so that's why often I push myself harder than I should, because I know what to do to reverse it. And sometimes I've had to take a month or so to get my symptoms under control because it's been a lot of work to do that. But I'm not concerned about them. It's like, yeah, I push my body. There you go. You need to give yourself more rest and time and it'll be better. And sure enough, every time it turns around. So that's the place I want you to get to.
Around in a month. That's the differentiating factor. And
but
I know it's, yeah.
But I never let my body get higher than I can turn it around quickly. That's the difference.
Yeah, see mine right now. See when I got like literally 25 minutes or whatever minutes ago, I literally had my anxiety was like now through the roof. And then I never had this before. I just had like my face completely flush red, like my cheeks completely and tingling.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, what just happened?
That's why, go to our website and take the hyperstimulation test, find out approximately where you are, because that'll give you some idea in terms of how long it's going to turn it around. But again, that's why we're so pro regular deep relaxation, regular stress reduction things, do things you love to do, so you never let that body get to that high place ever again. And for of us, if you'd have to let your body really get out of control for you to go back into 6-7 months of symptoms. Now, if you've done that, that means there's some underlying factors that you aren't aware of because they're driving your stress up higher than they should be, or you're not regularly doing your stress reduction strategies enough to keep your body centered. And so there's a lot of ways you can counteract that just by being aware of where the stressors are coming from, how high is my stress, and what am I doing to mitigate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much. And unfortunately, I do not want to bring everyone's mood down. Like it got to a place because like it's the 6th time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
and to me that means underlying factors haven't been touched or worked on sufficiently, because again, when you look at anxiety, it's pretty simple. We're anxious and we stress the body. If we're symptomatic and we get really symptomatic, all right, we got our anxiety cranking through the roof. This means there's behaviors that are causing it. And because we look at this as a cause and effect. When you identify the cause and you address it, you eliminate the effect. And so we always rebound because we're not doing level 2 recovery work. And I think we mention this quite often at the website. That's why it's so important. We can always recover from stress, but if we don't do it, the underlying factors, it's just a matter we're right back to where we were just in a little while down the road.
Well, I thought I did it because like I knew the behaviors and I knew how to contain them, and that was it. But I never dealt with what drives the behaviors.
Yep.
So
and that's what we mean by underlying factors. Containment's one thing. We can settle ourselves and not worry by containing, but if we're always containing, that means we've got behaviors that are driving the anxiousness, and that's why we want to go after those behaviors.
Yeah. Okay, so unfortunately what happened with me was I could not take it anymore and I got a benzo, unfortunately. There was, because I was keep on spiraling. Oh no, this again. And I was like, contain, relax, calm down. It's just stress, relax, calm down. And I was pretty much unable to calm myself down. I was getting scared from silly things,
Yep.
And I was like, for the first time in my life, because I went through this 5 times and I was like always no drugs, no nothing, FIVO, just go through it, use your techniques, you're going to get better, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And it got better, but I just couldn't do it, I reached the level where I was like, okay, maybe I'm going to struggle with this for the rest of my days. Yeah. And I got suicidal and I was like, I'm just going to take a benzo. Yeah. And I almost did the bad thing, I do not want to make the conversation go very dark here. I'm sorry. But the thing is but I pray every day. I'm doing 4 deep relaxations per day. I'm containing. I have my core fears written down. But I'm really concerned also about the benzo. It's 1.5 milligram of bromazepam. The horror
You're taking, you're taking that now, are you?
Yeah, I'm taking that now, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. And you see, that's one of the problems with benzos, is that we can never settle ourselves completely as long as we're taking a benzodiazepine because the body cannot get there physically. Because the benzo now has become the GABA that's supposed to calm the body, and it's only active as long as the pill is active. So we don't have the natural resources to calm ourselves in those moments because the body just can't get there. And I get that because I was on benzos for a long time. And that's why if a person wants to make complete recovery and have what you feel like you can control is doing the underlying factor work and then doing a slow taper, coming off the benzo and giving your body time so you can gain that control. Because I have to tell you, I never had complete control as long as I was on the benzo. It just did not have it. There's no way I could calm myself down no matter how hard I tried because the body just couldn't get there. There's no way for it. And that's why I came off and then worked at containment and settling my body, because once I got off and my body was, far enough away from it, I realized, wow, I can actually feel calm again the way I want to. The benzo is always going to cause that problem.
The thing is, though, that but I've heard you say that we can make progress, even a little bit of level 1 progress with a benzo.
You can.
I'm on a low dose.
Yeah, but you won't have full control over your body. That's the problem. You can learn about anxiety. You can become unafraid of your symptoms. You can know what to do. You can work at stress reduction. And I would really encourage, again, to work at level 2 recovery so you're not having to always be in stress damage control. So you can do all those things, but there does come a time where a person does have to discontinue so you can reap the benefits of that full control.
Yeah, and if I'm on the benzo for almost 2 months, because it's almost 2 months, I know in the 4-week range you get chemically addicted.
Yep.
But the thing is, I'm really scared of the adverse effects of coming off.
Yep.
And I feel so emotionally helpless and trapped here. Any advice?
Yeah, I understand how you can feel that way, but just recognize that you're just coming off a chemical that's helping to calm your body temporarily now. As you come down, yeah, you can feel stimulated, but a lot of times we've been way worse without the benzo. At least I was. And so when I came off it, I realized, all right, there's going to be some bumpy days here, but there's going to be an end in sight. At about the 2-week mark, the body does start to settle, and I get more control. And from 2 weeks to 4 weeks, you gain more control. So the pain of coming off the benzo is short term, but we want to be prepared so we're not freaking ourselves out every time. And for me, when I came off the benzo, I got really good at containment. I knew what was going on, and when my body was wired and I couldn't settle it physically or manually, I just recognized, okay, this is going to be short term. Just got to get through it the best way I can. Tough it out. It's going to get better. Not scaring myself of the what if I can't and what if this gets worse and what if, all the what ifs. I just didn't do any of that. Settle myself. As the body's settled, I gain more control, and that built my confidence. So you don't have to be afraid of coming off. Just expect it's going to be bumpy, but you can get through it. You've been through worse.
Yeah, okay, but the thing is, I have that preassumption. I do not know the word, but I have the thing that it's going to be hell, for 100% sure hell. That's the thing.
It can be tough. Yeah, it can be tough, but you can get through it. That's the thing.
Am I not going to be one of the people who maybe has a milder experience? That's what I mean. It's because that's what Larry told me.
Yeah.
Larry told me that, okay, maybe it's going to be really tough, but maybe it's not going to be really tough.
Yeah. Yeah. One person I worked with over the years, some time ago, said he had a harder time coming off of nicotine than he did the benzo.
Yeah.
So it is going to change from person to person. Mindset makes all the difference. So I'd encourage you to keep working at the deep relaxation. And when you think you're ready, then start the taper. And I would not encourage a long taper because we just prolong the agony. Talk with your pharmacist about an appropriate taper regime. Follow that and, brace yourself for some tough days. They're not going to all be tough. The first couple of days, not really that bad because the body's still adjusting. It's usually days 3 to 7 and 8 are the tough ones. But if we're prepared, have good things to get through that, we can get through it. And once we get through those days, it gets easier.
Yeah, I'm in my mind, I view it as I'm going to be a cockroach. Even if they threw nukes on me, I'm just going to passively accept it.
Yep, that's what I did. And it's just it was bumpy and everything else. So what? I worked at it, got through it. And once you get beyond that 2-week mark, you start to gain that control. And that's when confidence starts to build. So it's just a short-term pain. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, as Larry mentioned. Everybody's different. But what I should do, Foivos, I should get to Brianna before she has to leave for work, if you don't mind.
I'm really sorry I forgot completely. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Not a problem.